Alright, today let's do a little bit of millinery. Millinery is hat making. So we're going to use some millinery techniques. We're not making a hat, but I bought this hat online. And a funny thing is that on pretty much every like straw hat that you buy online, in the comments they're like, oh no, it's terrible, it came wrinkled. And that's how literally every hat comes because they have to package it, right? So that is normal. And what you're supposed to do is then steam it out. So I've got my iron, and you see how I had a wrinkle there a second ago, and just a little bit of steam and ironing, and it is already gone. So yeah, it's pretty simple. That's all you gotta do is just iron the crap out of it using steam. So I'm using high heat and I'm using steam. If you're using a lower heat, it's not gonna work. So maybe that's the problem. I don't know. I also have a head block here, and I bet you, that's my bet, I bet that people could get the brim pretty well, because you can just stick that on a flat surface. So my bet is, because there are people in a lot of these reviews that are like, oh, I even, ironed it out, and, nothing happened, and it was terrible, and things. My bet is they probably couldn't get this ironed out well, because who has a head block lying around? So I get it. I get that part. However, if you do not have a head block, you can use a ham and stick that in here and use that to kind of get some of those guys out, right? So if you don't have a head block, you may use a ham. And it does take a little bit of time. You might have to go over some of these things a few times. But also, like, after you've steamed it, just letting it sit kind of in that shape will help. So if I take it and I iron it and then I just, like, bunch it back up, of course it's not going to look great, right? But if I let it sit in the shape that I want it to be, it is much more likely to work. So not only do you have to give it a good steam, let me just turn my steam up. Let's just give it a really good steam, right? So even if I do give it a really good steam, if I don't give it time to like sit and have the steam soak in, kind of just like sit in that space, then it is much more likely to come back up and kind of give you some little puckers. So if I let this sit for a second and kind of cool into that position, I'm much less likely to get some of these lumpy lumps. So we'll just leave that for a second. Just kind of try to keep it that way while we get this other edge again. Yes, I am in my pajamas at home. And yes, I did just take a bath. So there's that. My hair is wet. Should have kept that a little flatter before moving on. Can I have that sit flat? See, that is already not having a chance. Now, granted, there are times when this is sat so long that it is crushed, or the shape that they put in it, it's crushed some of these fibers and kind of like broken them because it is straw. So there's also the possibility that when this is shipped, some of these fibers are broken, and that's not something you can steam out because those are just like broken fibers. They're just like, and they should be just like this, right? So that's a thing. But just do this. All right. Steam, steam, steam. And it also takes just a bit of patience. A few times, some patience. It'll be fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that sit for a bit, let that soak in, and then I'm going to stick it on the head block and do the top. Okay. So this is sat for a little bit. It's still warm right here, so I think I'd probably usually let it sit a little bit longer. However, I'm going to do this on here, but when I put it on here, this is going to warp the brim anyway, so I'm going to have to redo the brim later anyway, just to get it back to being like a nice smooth little thing. Also, on the ends, there's something called millinery wire. So you can kind of change this if you want. And like you could make little like bloop 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 bloop, or after you've steamed it up, you could do like, I don't know, some cool like twirly thing, and this is like down like that. I don't know. You could make it kind of structural or do some fun stuff. So that's a very fun thing about millinery wire. So kind of be creative maybe. It's nice. You just use this as a base. All right, so this is typically the tag, or where the inside hat band. This is grosgrain. Where the gap or the seam is, that's your center back. So I'm going to line my center back up with the center back of the head. And this has a chin strap, so I'm just going to pull that down and out of the way too. And this head block is slightly larger than my head. It's 1/2 inch larger. So I'm going to try to kind of force this onto it a little bit. Alright, so now I'm just going to steam this guy. Just kind of mold it back into the shape. Oh, actually, one thing I really like to do, and I think this helps a lot, so I've done some shaping and some steam on the outside, but one thing I love to do, I don't know if anyone else does this, this might just be me being weird, but what I love to do is fill the inside up with steam, and then stick it on, and I feel like that helps, to just like get some of that steam on the inside, and so you're kind of steaming it kind of from both areas at the same time. So I've got that inside steam that wants to come up, and then I've got, you know, the steam that's going in the opposite direction, so we're kind of getting both the inside and the outside. So that's something I like to do, and I feel like that helps. Yes, yes, yes. And again, I'm just going to let this sit for a little bit and kind of let that heat and that shape just kind of sink in. Because if you pull things off too quickly, then yeah, the shape isn't going to stay. Because yeah, you heated it and steamed it in this shape, and then you're going to pull it off and it's going to kind of shrink in on itself again, right? So you want to leave it on the form after you steamed it for a little bit. All right. Now we've steamed our top. That's looking pretty good, pretty evened out for the most part. Now I'm going to pull it off. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Now I'm just going to redo the brim, since again it's been sitting on that thing and we don't want it to be this floppy yet. I just kind of want to redo some of these. Just want to redo the brim, get these things a little flattened out once again. And then after this, I could shape it any way I wanted to. So that's where I could play with the millinery wire on the brim's edge and kind of, you know, make some fun shapes if I wanted. Good, good. And again, after I do this step, I'm just going to let it flatten out. It's just going to sit here for some time. Oh, one other thing I can do, because both sides do matter, is I can also just stick this on the edge and get that inside, and that should really help with anything that's being really stubborn. And there you go. So yeah, so I'm just going to let this sit for a bit and let that all soak in. So there you have it.